They put the handcuffs on her before they ever asked her name twice. Aaliyah Monroe was 17, standing outside a country club her family once built, watching strangers raise their phones while a millionaire laughed and called her a liar. Her wrists burned as cold metal closed in. Her chest felt tight, not because she was afraid, but because she knew exactly why this was happening. Not because she was wrong, not because she had no proof, but because to them the truth didn't look like her. Every breath tasted like humiliation. Every stare felt like a verdict already decided. In that moment, Aaliyah understood something terrifying. The truth can be real, documented, undeniable, and still be treated like a crime. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She stayed silent because she knew that if they let this go any further, something irreversible was about to happen. And if you stay until the end of this story, you'll witness the exact moment everything turns so violently and unexpectedly that the people who mocked her would wish they had listened from the very first word. The first thing Aaliyah Monroe noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that follows a joke that lands wrong, when people stop laughing not because they feel sorry, but because they're waiting to see what happens next. She stood just outside the iron gates of Harlan Ridge Country Club, the afternoon sun catching on the polished hoods of luxury cars lined up like trophies. Bentleys, Range Rovers, a matte black Porsche idling impatiently. And then there was her, 17 years old, black. Wearing a simple navy blouse she'd ironed twice that morning, faded jeans and flats that had walked too many bus routes to count. Her leather portfolio was tucked under her arm, the edges worn soft from years of being opened and closed with care. Inside were documents most people never had to carry to prove who they were. She took a breath and stepped forward. "I'm here for the 2 o'clock board meeting," she said calmly to the security guard at the gate. "My name is Aaliyah Monroe." The guard glanced at her, then at his clipboard. His eyes lingered a second too long on her clothes, on her skin. His brow furrowed. "I don't see that name," he said. "I'm representing the Monroe Family Trust," Aaliyah replied. Her voice didn't shake. It never did anymore. "You should see it listed under Caleb Monroe Sr." The name should have meant something. 50 years ago, it would have stopped conversations cold. Before the guard could answer, a loud laugh cut through the air. "Well, I'll be damned." A tall man in a fitted polo shirt stepped out from the restaurant entrance, sunglasses perched casually on his head. Gregory Harlan, everyone here knew him. Board member, major donor, the kind of man whose confidence came from never being questioned. He looked Aaliyah up and down, slow and deliberate, like he was appraising a bad investment. "She says she's a Monroe," he announced to the small crowd gathering nearby. "Did you hear that? A Monroe." A few chuckles followed. Phones appeared almost instantly. Aaliyah felt it, that familiar tightening in her chest. Not fear, recognition. She'd felt it at Oakwell Preparatory School when classmates asked how she really got her scholarship, on buses when drivers double-checked her pass, in stores where clerks watched her hands instead of her face. "Yes," she said evenly, "I'm Caleb Monroe's granddaughter. I have documentation." Gregory laughed harder now, the sound sharp and theatrical. "Documentation? That's adorable." He reached out and snatched the portfolio from her hands before she could react. "Amazing," he said, flipping it open. "Birth certificates, trust papers, stock ownership." He held them up for others to see. "Very convincing. Where'd you print these? Public library?" Aaliyah's fingers curled into fists at her sides. "They're certified copies," she said. "If you call the family attorney, Jonathan Pierce, he can confirm everything." That was when Gregory's smile changed. Not wider, colder. "Oh, she knows a name," he said, turning to the crowd. "See how prepared she is? This isn't her first time." His wife, Elaine Harlan, stepped closer, her expression carefully arranged into something that looked like pity. "Sweetheart," she said, lowering her voice just enough to sound reasonable, "do you really think people like us wouldn't notice something like this?" People like us. The words hit harder than any insult. Aaliyah swallowed. "I'm not asking for favors. I'm asking to attend a meeting I'm legally entitled to be at." Gregory leaned closer, invading her space. She could smell his cologne. Expensive, overpowering. "Let me explain how this works," he said quietly. "The Monroes were powerful. Real power. They didn't take buses. They didn't show up dressed like this. And they sure as hell didn't need to lie." A few people laughed again, softer this time, uncomfortable. But no one spoke up. Aaliyah looked around, dozens of faces, all watching, all waiting for her to break. She didn't. "My parents died 5 years ago," she said. "Car accident. I was 12. My grandmother raised me. That doesn't erase who I am." Elaine scoffed. "Dead parents too? Wow, that's thorough." Gregory straightened and waved to the guard. "This is fraud. Identity theft. Call the police." The word police landed like a drop plate. The guard hesitated. "Mr. Harlan, maybe we should verify." "Are you questioning me?" Gregory snapped. "I sit on this board. I sign checks. Make the call." The radio crackled. Aaliyah's heart started to race, but she forced herself to breathe. "I'm calling my attorney," she said, reaching for her phone. Gregory laughed again. "Go ahead. Call whoever you want." 2 minutes later, squad cars pulled into the circular drive, lights flashing, no sirens, but they didn't need them. The message was clear enough. Officer Ryan Miller stepped out first, hand resting near his belt. His partner, Officer Hannah Brooks, followed, eyes scanning the scene. Gregory didn't waste a second. "She's impersonating a deceased family," he said loudly. "Forged documents. Trespassing." Officer Miller turned to Aaliyah. "Is that true, miss?" "No," she said. "I'm telling the truth." "What's your real name?" "Aaliyah Monroe." Miller exhaled through his nose. "We're going to need you to come with us while we sort this out." Aaliyah felt something crack inside her. Not loudly, not all at once. Just enough to hurt. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said. "I'm being accused because of how I look." Officer Miller's jaw tightened. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Phones were everywhere now, recording, streaming, commenting in real time. "This is going viral," Elaine whispered, almost pleased. Cold metal closed around Aaliyah's wrists. The click echoed in her ears. As she was guided toward the police car, she caught a glimpse of the building behind the gates. White columns, perfect landscaping, and inside a boardroom where people were about to vote on her family's legacy without her. She lifted her chin. They could cuff her hands. They couldn't erase the truth, and they had no idea what they just started. Before we continue, this is where the story turns from uncomfortable to undeniable. If you were standing there, would you have believed Aaliyah? Have you ever doubted someone's truth because it didn't look right to you? Think about your answers, because in the next part, the truth doesn't just come out. It forces everyone to choose. The back seat of the police car felt smaller than it should have. Aaliyah Monroe sat with her wrists cuffed in front of her, the plastic seat sticking to the backs of her legs. The door was closed. The window cracked just enough for sound to leak in, but not enough for her to speak. Outside, the world continued as if nothing extraordinary was happening. People laughed nervously. Someone whispered, "I knew it." Another voice said, "That's what happens when you lie." She stared straight ahead. Inside her chest, everything was loud. She thought of her grandmother, Ruth Monroe, probably standing at the kitchen sink at Eastwood Apartments, humming softly as she always did when she was worried. She thought of the alarm that rang every morning at 5:30, the bus rides, the scholarship essays, the promise she'd made to herself never to raise her voice just to be heard. She had told the truth. That was supposed to be enough. Officer Hannah Brooks stood a few feet away, holding Aaliyah's portfolio. She flipped through the documents again, slower this time. Her brow creased when she touched the raised seal on the birth certificate. She ran her thumb along the paper, then glanced toward her partner. "Ryan," she said quietly, "these don't look homemade." Officer Ryan Miller barely looked up. "Anyone can fake paperwork now." "Still," Hannah pressed, "the seals—" "Let the forensics team figure it out," he cut in. "She fits the profile." Aaliyah closed her eyes. Fits the profile. Across the driveway, Gregory Harlan was holding court, gesturing broadly as if this were his stage. "You wouldn't believe the nerve," he told a small group of club members. "Walks right up here like she owns the place. Kids these days, no shame." His wife Elaine nodded solemnly. "It's sad, really. Delusion like that usually comes from broken homes." Aaliyah opened her eyes again. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't cry. She refused to give them that satisfaction. Then the crowd shifted. An elderly man made his way through slowly, leaning on a polished wooden cane. His steps were careful, but his eyes were sharp. Walter Kingsley, one of the club's founding members. Old money, old history, old memories that hadn't been rewritten yet. "What's all this?" Walter asked, his voice thin but steady. Gregory turned, relief flashing across his face. "Walter, thank God. Just some girl trying to pull a scam. Claims she's a Monroe." Walter froze. "A Monroe?" he repeated. "Yes," Gregory said quickly. "Obviously fake. The Monroe line ended years ago." Walter's grip tightened on his cane. "No, it didn't." The laughter died. "They had a son," Walter continued. "Marcus Monroe. Married Naomi. They had a little girl. Caleb showed me her picture not long before he passed. He was so proud." Elaine's smile faltered. "Walter, that was a long time ago." "And they died," Walter finished for her. "Car accident. I remember the flowers. I remember the funeral notice." Gregory's face drained just enough for people to notice. "Well," he said, forcing a laugh, "even if that were true, it doesn't mean this girl—" "What's her name?" Walter asked. Gregory hesitated. "She said, Aaliyah." Walter's eyes widened. "That's it," he whispered. "That's the name." The crowd went quiet. Phones lowered. No one spoke. Walter stepped closer to the police car. Aaliyah looked up and met his gaze. There was something about the way he looked at her. Not curious, not skeptical. Familiar. "May I?" Walter asked Officer Brooks. Hannah glanced at Ryan. He shrugged. Walter leaned down slightly. "Child," he said gently, "would you turn your head for me? Just behind your left ear." Aaliyah did. Hannah brushed aside Aaliyah's short curls. There it was, a small crescent-shaped birthmark, faint but unmistakable. Hannah inhaled sharply. "Ryan!" He stepped closer, looked, stared. Walter's voice trembled. "Caleb said it ran in the family. Said his granddaughter had it too." Gregory took a step back. Inside the club, on the second floor, the emergency board meeting was already underway. A polished mahogany table, leather chairs, oil portraits lining the walls, men in suits staring down from history. One chair sat empty. A small brass nameplate read, Monroe. Dust coated it. Margaret Holloway, the board chair, checked her watch. "She's late," someone muttered. "There is an heir," Margaret said firmly. "And she exists." "Then where is she?" a board member snapped. "We've waited years." Margaret didn't answer. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Then she stood so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. "Meeting adjourned," she said. Outside, Officer Brooks unlocked the car door. "Miss Monroe," she said softly, "we need to take these cuffs off." The metal clicked open. Aaliyah's wrists burned, red marks circling them like proof of something she hadn't imagined. Margaret Holloway hurried across the driveway, heels clicking sharply. She stopped in front of Aaliyah and really looked at her, past the clothes, past the humiliation, into her eyes. "Oh my God," Margaret whispered. "You look just like him." Tears filled Aaliyah's eyes despite her best efforts. "They wouldn't listen," she said. "I told them the truth." Margaret turned slowly to Gregory. Her voice hardened. "You had her arrested." "She didn't look," Gregory began. "Finish that sentence," Margaret said coldly. Silence. A black sedan screeched to a stop near the entrance. Jonathan Pierce, the family attorney, stepped out, briefcase in hand, expression already severe. "Who handcuffed my client?" he asked. No one answered. Documents were spread across the hood of the police car. Birth certificates, trust records, stock ownership. The truth laid bare in black and white. Gregory stared at them like they might disappear. Inside the boardroom, Aaliyah took her seat. The dust had been wiped away. The chair fit her perfectly. "I'm not here for revenge," she said quietly. "I'm here because my grandfather believed this place could be better." No one interrupted her. Outside, Gregory Harlan's phone buzzed nonstop. Videos, headlines, millions of views. His smile, the one he'd worn so easily, was gone. And for the first time in his life, No amount of money could buy silence. By nightfall, the gates of Harlan Ridge Country Club were closed, but the story had already escaped. Aaliyah Monroe sat in the back of Jonathan Pierce's car as it rolled away from the club, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The adrenaline was gone now, leaving behind a quiet exhaustion that settled into her bones. The city lights blurred past the window, and for the first time that day, she let herself breathe. "You did everything right," Jonathan said gently from the front seat. "You stayed calm. You told the truth. That matters." Aaliyah nodded, though her throat felt tight. "It shouldn't have taken all that," she said. "A birthmark, a name from the past, someone important recognizing me." Jonathan didn't argue. He knew she was right. Back at Eastwood Apartments, Ruth Monroe was sitting on the couch, hands clasped, the television glowing silently in front of her. When she heard the door open, she stood so fast her knees nearly buckled. "Aaliyah," she breathed. They held each other for a long moment. No words, just the kind of hug that carries fear, pride, grief, and relief all at once. "I was so scared," Ruth whispered, "but I knew they'd try to break you." "They tried," Aaliyah said softly. "They didn't win." By morning, the video had crossed 10 million views. The headline traveled faster than the truth ever had. "Teen handcuffed outside country club turns out to be legal owner." Some comments were angry, some defensive, but many were raw, honest, and painful to read. "This happened to me. They never believe us." She stayed calm. "I don't know if I could have." At Harlan Ridge, an emergency statement was released before noon. Gregory Harlan was suspended indefinitely pending investigation. An internal audit was announced. Apologies were issued, carefully worded and noticeably late. Gregory sat alone in his car in his driveway, refreshing his phone again and again. Sponsors pulled out. Business partners went silent. The image he had built so carefully was cracking, and he couldn't stop it. Inside the club's boardroom, Margaret Holloway stood at the head of the table. The mood was different now, quieter, heavier. "We failed," she said plainly, "not just Aaliyah Monroe. We failed the values this institution claims to stand for." No one disagreed. A full financial review uncovered what many had suspected but never proved. Gregory hadn't just abused his authority that day. He had been doing it for years. Contracts routed through shell companies. Deals that quietly excluded families of color. A system designed to benefit the same people. Over and over, the investigation became public, and then it became federal. Aaliyah testified calmly weeks later, sitting straight in a room that once would have intimidated her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't exaggerate. She told the truth. "I wasn't arrested because I lied," she said. "I was arrested because no one believed the truth could look like me." That sentence echoed far beyond the room. Gregory Harlan was eventually charged with fraud, civil rights violations, and abuse of power. The man who had laughed loudest that afternoon now avoided eye contact, his confidence replaced by something smaller and colder. But Aaliyah didn't focus on him. She focused forward. With the board's unanimous approval, she established the Monroe Justice Initiative, using her family's trust to fund legal aid for people facing discrimination in housing, education, and employment. She insisted on one rule from the start: no one has to prove they deserve dignity. The initiative's first case involved a janitor fired after being accused of theft without evidence. The second helped a student wrongfully suspended after being labeled aggressive. Wins came slowly at first, then faster. Lives changed quietly, without headlines. At Oakwell Preparatory School, teachers who once asked careful questions now simply congratulated her. Some apologized, some didn't. Aaliyah accepted what felt sincere and moved on from what didn't. She graduated with honors that spring. On the day she left for college, Ruth pressed a folded piece of paper into her hand. A letter her grandfather had written years ago and never sent. "The world will test you, little warrior. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong in a way that scares people. When they doubt you, remember this: truth doesn't need permission. It just needs courage." Aaliyah read it twice. At Harlan Ridge, changes didn't come easily, but they came honestly. New leadership, transparent policies, a public acknowledgement of harm. It wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was different. One evening, months later, Aaliyah returned briefly to the club, Not as a spectacle, not as a headline. She walked past the gate without stopping. No one questioned her. No one stared. Inside the main hall, she paused in front of her grandfather's portrait. The same steady eyes, the same quiet strength. "I kept my promise," she whispered. That night, she posted a short message online. "I didn't win because I was special. I won because the truth existed long before anyone listened." If this story helps even one person stay calm, stay strong, and keep telling the truth, then it matters. The comments flooded in again. "Thank you. I needed this. I'll remember her name." Aaliyah closed her laptop and smiled, just a little. Somewhere, someone would still be doubted tomorrow. She knew that, but now they wouldn't be alone. Before you leave, take a moment and tell us honestly, how did this story make you feel after hearing it to the end? Do you think Aaliyah handled the situation the right way, or would you have done something different? If you believe stories like this matter, please comment the number 111 below and let us know where you're watching from. What country are you in right now? If this story moved you, helped you see something differently, or reminded you to pause before judging, please share this video. Because the more people hear stories like Aaliyah's, the harder it becomes to ignore the truth.